Hi everyone, this is Mr. Falkowski. I apologize that I'm unable to be with you today during period 6. However, you do have a quest tomorrow. You also do have the flashcards as well as part 2 questions. So that's what you should be working on today following the watching of this video. So just to wrap up, and then I'll just briefly overview what you need to know for tomorrow's quest, which will consist of about 20 to 25 multiple choice questions as well as 2 FRQs. When we look at bureaucracy and the scope of government, some people look at the size of the federal bureaucracy as a government out of control, despite the fact that we know the federal bureaucracy has really remained stagnant for the most part, and even some agencies, with what they've been tasked to do by Congress, really don't even have enough resources to carry out what they're expected to do. So remember, bureaucracy only carries out policies, and really Congress and the president decide what needs to be done. And sometimes that's very ambiguous, and as a result, that is left up to the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, to decide. There are some times where the president, rather, has difficulty controlling the cabinet level agencies for one of the 4 following reasons. So remember, with iron networks, or you can call them issue networks as they're more complicated today, but we know that agencies sometimes have more political support from interest groups, especially if it's something that they favor or don't. Agency staff often have information and technical expertise that the president and his or her advisors lack. So if it's something very complicated, let's say with commerce, and President Obama doesn't have enough of a background to make informed decisions, well, sometimes the agency will take advantage of that. Certainly we've seen that in the past. In addition, civil servants, who are aka bureaucrats, who remain in the administration throughout changes of the administration, develop loyalty. Certainly they might be more loyalty to the bureaucracy or the agency that they're a part of instead of the president. So sometimes if it's something affecting their agency, or if they're part of the EPA, they might feel more loyal to that than compared to the president, who might not favor the EPA. And then also keep in mind that bureaucracy, has 2 bosses, the first one being the president, the second one being Congress. So Congress is a competitor for influence over the bureaucracy. It is really crucial to be familiar with this particular slide as to why the president has significant difficulty, reining in bureaucracy at times for these 4 major reasons. Now, of course, there are criticisms. These are also known as pathologies of bureaucracy. Well, some say there's too much red tape. That's just essentially a metaphor for too many policies. Sometimes there's conflict, right? How am I supposed to carry out this law? You might see conflict between the president and the Congress. You might even see conflict within the agency itself as to how to implement something. In addition, duplication. We saw that one slide with the border security, how many federal agencies were involved. Some say this is there's no reason for this duplication. Why do we need this many agencies enforcing border security? Some say it's unchecked growth, especially at the state level, where we've seen that significantly increase. Others say it's just a bunch of waste, and a bunch of Washington bureaucrats just spending federal tax money. And some say there's just a lack of accountability, that it's very difficult to get fired. A lot of people look to FEMA during Hurricane Katrina. There really wasn't too many heads rolling off the block. Sure, the FEMA director eventually resigned, but everyone else involved in FEMA after that botched handling of the hurricane cleanup, really nothing happened to them, because some say it's just a job for life. So some suggestions for reforms. Some have said making appointments no longer than 6 to 12 years. Some say making it easier to fire a bureaucrat. You'll see on the next slide it is very difficult to do that. Maybe even rotating professionals between various agencies, including the outside and the private sector. So that's where that whole privatization idea comes about in. Others say reward employee initiatives, fewer rules, or even emphasize customer satisfaction, because in the end, the bureaucracy is serving the people, and it should rely and emphasize customer satisfaction, because that's who they're supposed to be serving. And just to get to this one slide about firing a bureaucrat, it's very, very difficult. So for example, if you look at one of these 6, take number 1, for example, the employee must be given written notice at least 30 days in advance that he or she is to be fired or demoted for incompetence or misconduct. That's if they are ever found to be incompetent or in misconduct. So 30 days right there. If they don't have that, can't, fire them. Let's see another one. Written notice must contain a statement of reasons, including specific examples of unacceptable performance. So all this has to be documented over time. So it takes a lot of time to actually fire a bureaucrat in the very few circumstances that it actually happens. So in summary, from everything that we've learned about bureaucracy, bureaucrats do shape policy as administrators, implementers, and regulators. We do know that. And bureaucracy's primary responsibility, keep this in mind, implementation. They are the implementers. They are the action figures. And again, last but not least, as I've been emphasizing this, federal bureaucracy has not grown, but in fact has shrunk within the past couple of years, where we see most of the major growth at the state level. So, if I were you and I were studying for this quest tomorrow, I would very much look through these notes. I would also watch the video that I've posted under today, and that should be a good refresher for you. I would also consult the study guidebook. Very, very good information there. Go through the PowerPoint. I would, definitely know how bureaucracy is organized. I would definitely be familiar with the types of bureaucrats, the history of patronage to protection, especially when it comes to civil service and the Pendleton Civil Service Act, the Hatch Act, and so on. Be able to classify, some of the major commissions, such as the EPA, or the Federal Trade Commission, rather. No Supreme Court cases, Moon v. Illinois. So, if you're familiar with the major ideas here, you should be okay. And the last thing I would also emphasize, the difference between an iron triangle, which we've looked at during interest groups, and issue networks. Remember, issue networks are a little bit more complicated and many more factors are in play, competing over the implementation policy of government. So with that said, if you just go onto my website, which you got this video from, you'll see we just finished the end of bureaucracy notes. This is a good review video to check out, just as a refresher, because this will be your last test grade of the marking period. So I would check this out, and should you have any questions, feel free to email me. I will be available via email at kfalkowski@vtsd.com. Okay? Thank you very much.